Hi everyone, Jamie here. Welcome back to my garden. So if you all saw the video I posted 2 days ago, I did a ton of work around the house that day. I mean, I did so much work. I was really productive, but I was very sore that day. And I don't often get sore when I work out in the garden because I work out in the garden pretty often, but every once in a while I kind of just get on a roll and push myself. And this day I ended up chopping down a lime tree, if you all saw that. So I was pretty darn sore by the end of the day. And the next day I went on a helicopter ride with Michael Glassman and we were placing plants all day. And my body was just screaming at me for a day off. So I decided to film a question and answer session. I posted in the community page or my community tab a call for questions. So thank you all so much to those of you who put questions in. I really appreciate it. The first question I will answer because I got a lot of these questions, not only here, but then also on that video. When I was chopping down, I was using an axe and I was chopping down the lime tree, and I got a lot of questions of people saying, why didn't you use a chainsaw? Why didn't you use a sawzall? Why didn't you use the proper tools? NC Flower Girl says, wouldn't a saw have been better? And yeah, probably, but it's so fun. Like, I know it doesn't really make sense. Like, now that I say it, I know it doesn't really make sense, but the axe was so much more fun. I wanted to chop a tree down with an axe. I've seen guys do it before, and I've seen arborists do it when they come to my house, and you know, they get kind of far with the chainsaw, but it only takes them so far, and then they use an axe. And so I just wanted to use an axe, and I was, you know, enjoying it, and then I wasn't enjoying it, but I figured I might as well go. So, you know, it's kind of funny because you know, I'm working on my own property. I'm kind of doing my own thing, and I don't always do the best, like the most, I don't know, I don't want to say the most sensible thing, but I guess in this situation, the most sensible thing. I was having fun chopping down the tree with the axe, and so that's why I didn't use anything else. That's why I didn't go rent a chainsaw, because where's the fun in that? So anyway, hope that answers your questions that you had about that. Next question is from S Creation Crafts. Question, how will you be cutting back your Supertunia plants, or will you just be pulling them this year? I know they are perennial in zone 9, but not sure how long they should be in the ground and how far back to prune them. So the Supertunias, they actually are not perennials here. They can be perennials. They are, they're very wishy-washy. Like, I would never trust that they would come back. However, I have overwintered them before and they have come back just not as nice as a new plant. So it kind of is, you know, it's kind of up to you if you want to try and overwinter your plants in zone 9. Now, I was looking at the weather. We're going to go through a La Nina atmosphere, or what do you call it? La Nina weather pattern this year. And it's supposed to be pretty calm and pretty mild. So I feel like this is the year that I could overwinter Supertunias if I wanted to. And so what I would do if I was planning to overwinter Supertunias is I would cut them back to a point where they still had lots of foliage to protect the root ball. I have cut back my temperennials further than that and exposed the root ball, and it's just been too much for them. So you want to leave enough foliage on so that they can continue to photosynthesize and they can continue to protect themselves. So maybe, you know, if they're a 3 feet wide Supertunia, maybe you want to cut them back just to a 1 foot wide Supertunia, or something like that. And then if you do have a frost on your forecast, go and cover them. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do with my Supertunias. I'm gonna, this winter, I'm gonna try and leave in as many annuals as I possibly can. I started doing that last year, not taking plants out early on and not doing garden cleanup early on in the fall, and I really enjoyed it. And so that's my plan for this year, is to leave as many annuals in the ground as I can and basically just see what happens. So stay tuned and we'll see how it goes. But Supertunias are technically only hardy down to zone 10. Superbenas are are hardy down to zone 9. So those will definitely overwinter. Amy Barr asks, how often were you spraying for bugs? My garden got taken over by spider mites and then some fungus and lost tomatoes and dahlias, etc. But saw you sprayed BT and takedown regularly. Do you have a regular spray schedule in summer? I'm so sorry, Amy. I feel you on the dahlias and the tomatoes this year. So bad. Such a bad year for dahlias, such a bad year for tomatoes. And it wasn't just us. It was a lot of people said that same thing. I was just at Curious Flora Nursery, and the Colleen Wheeler, who is like a total fantastic gardener, she said the same thing. She had the worst tomato year that she's had in a really long time. So I don't know where you live, but if you live anywhere near me, you're not alone. We had a really, really weird year. When it comes to my spray schedule, I actually only sprayed takedown spray once or twice all season. I only sprayed takedown spray, which is Bonide takedown spray. I only spray that kind of as needed if I see a problem. And I probably could have sprayed it more because I saw more problems, but I will only spray if something's really, really bothering me. I try and leave as much of it as I can because I want some of the bad pests there for the good pests to feed on. And, if that, I want there to be a balance in my garden. I don't want to overcorrect. And so I kind of give myself a lot of leeway when it comes to bugs in the garden. Now, when it comes to budworms, I have no leeway for them. I hate budworms and I see no use for them. That's my own personal thing. In my opinion, I see no use for budworms. And during the summer, we do spray BT once a week, and we spray it when there's no other pollinators and all that kind of stuff. We try and spray it in the evening so that because BT, Bacillus thuringiensis, is affected by sunlight, and sunlight will actually break it down faster so that it doesn't have as much time to work. So if you spray it kind of as the sun is going down, the pollinators are gone, and then also it works longer. It stays active longer on the leaf, so it gives the budworm larvae or the budworms a longer time to eat it and then die. So we usually did that about once a week, maybe not consistently once a week, but pretty much once a week. But takedown, not as consistent. That was kind of as needed. What I would recommend to you is I would have a pest control day, right? And so I used to say like Tuesday was my pest control day, Monday was my fertilizer day, Tuesday was my pest control day. And what I did is I would go around on Tuesdays and I would say, okay, what needs treatment? Am I showing signs of slugs and snails? Okay, let me apply some Sluggo. Am I showing signs of budworms? Okay, let me apply some BT. Is there spider mites? Let me deal with this. And so Tuesdays was my day that I could really focus on what type of pest, whatever was in my garden at the time. And sometimes I didn't need to do anything on a Tuesday, but Tuesday was my day to kind of walk around the garden and see kind of what was going on. So if you have a scheduled day, a scheduled pest day, that might help you a lot and help you stay on track. So hopefully that helped. So next question is from Jay Dahman. Here she says, hi, I just found your channel. Welcome. And I am really enjoying your content, especially because I live 2.5 hours away. As a country renter with gophers and Bermuda grass, I'm so sorry, I do wine barrels, stock tanks, or large pots for most of my garden. Do I need to fertilize more frequently in containers here in our heat? Yes, definitely. And what kinds of pests do you battle and how do you do it? Thanks. So I kind of just answered about the pests. Budworms are my main nemesis. During the winter time, we have slugs and snails, but you probably won't have too much of that problem if you're doing all pots and containers. Gophers, oh my gosh, gophers. Like, let's not talk about gophers. Gophers. Gophers are definitely a big problem. And then like birds and squirrels and stuff like that. And then spider mites, of course. Spider mites are definitely an issue that I deal with. And you know what? I actually started seeing this year some powdery mildew, like kind of a lot back here. Back by the greenhouse, it was on my crepe myrtles, it was a little bit on my Gertrude Jekyll rose, and it was a little bit on my honeysuckle, my pink lemonade honeysuckle. And that's not normal for us. We usually don't get that much powdery mildew, so it was interesting to see that. So anyway, here she asked, Jay Dahman asked, do I need to fertilize more frequently in containers here in our heat? And the answer is yes, absolutely. You need to fertilize more in containers. So if you think about if you plant something in the ground, there's worms, there's bugs, there's mycorrhizae, there's a whole microbiome microbiome in the ground that is helping feed the plants. So if you're growing annuals that bloom a lot, you need to fertilize those anyway. But if you're growing something in a container, there's none of that microbiome in there. And so it's relying 100% on you to provide it with any nutrients. And so that's why fertilizing your containers is huge, absolutely huge. So not only do I fertilize my containers once a week with a water-soluble fertilizer, this is for annuals, but I also always put in a slow release granular fertilizer. Proven Winners has one. Osmocote is another example of one. There's a bunch of them that you can get at your garden center, but I truly think that that is key if you live in a hot area and you have to water once or even twice a day. All that watering leaches out so many nutrients out of our pots that having that slow release fertilizer is absolutely key. So I would definitely recommend next year when you start planting, before you put anything in those pots, put a couple scoops of slow release fertilizer in, and then if you reapplied halfway through the year, that would be even better as well. All right, next question. I'm in zone 7B, Maryland, and I planted a quart-sized Chitalpa. It grew to almost 6 feet, but never bloomed. Any ideas why it didn't bloom? It's on the east side, but gets sun in the summer from 8 to 2 p.m. Do you think it'll bloom next year? I don't know. I love El Nino Chitalpa. It is one of my favorite plants, but you have to remember my weather that I have here in California. We are so dry and we are so hot, and my Chitalpas get sun from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., right? We're talking 12 hours of hot, blazing hot sun, and my Chitalpas are absolutely happy as clams, and I don't fertilize, I don't supplemental fertilize them. I did cut them back in the winter time, but I'm not really doing much with them, and they're doing fantastic. But I have heard from a lot of people that their El Nino Chitalpas are not growing and not blooming as much. And I'm wondering, I know it doesn't like as much humidity, right? And if I see your Chitalpa is mainly getting morning sun, right? You're getting just about 6 hours of morning sun. So that's the weakest sun during the day. So I would say your Chitalpa is not getting enough sun. So if you could move it to another place, that would be great. That gets more sun and as hot a sun as possible. Late afternoon sun is key. Like, this is a plant that can handle the hot afternoon sun. So I would say probably move it to an area like that. However, the foliage on it is really pretty as well. So if you just wanted to leave it there, then, it's a great foliage. It is deciduous, but it is a great foliage plant. But the blooms are so pretty. So I would say probably not enough sun. You might be, Maryland, I think, is pretty humid. So you might be also a little too humid for it. So it might just not be the right plant for you. Next question is from a local. This is from Terry. She says, "Good morning, Janie. Love your channel. I met you at Elk Grove Proven Winners event." Nice. I have 2 questions. One, will we in the Sacramento area be getting a better, more integrated selection of Proven Winners plants at our local Green Acres? It's pretty small and I dare say pretty pitiful. I agree. So I'll answer that before I go to the next one. So Terry, yes. So this year, for those of you who don't know, I started a program with Proven Winners called Best for the West, because here in California, we are really on the West. We're very underserved for Proven Winners. Proven Winners is a Midwest company, and those of you in the Midwest are so incredibly lucky because you have so much access to all the Proven Winners, and we just don't have as much access, unfortunately. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that, and a lot of it is there's not a lot of growers here growing the plants, right? Because the plants, you have to get the plants from the Midwest, ship them over the Rockies where it's cold and snowy at the time that you have to ship them. And it's a pretty big pain to ship all the cuttings so the growers can start growing them here on the West Coast. So the first year of Best for the West was kind of like a trial run to see how it was going to go. That was this year. And you guys, I don't want to jinx it, but I think it was pretty darn successful. I think everybody was happy. I was so happy. We definitely saw a lot more plants here on the West Coast, and I know the growers are doubling, if not tripling, the amount of plants that they're growing. And I know some places that you mentioned in this comment told me that they way underestimated you guys. They thought that they were growing enough plants, and then they ran out and they had to purchase from other growers just to fulfill how much demand there was. So, and I wanted to say, I told you so, right? Like, I wanted to say there's a lot of us out there that love Proven Winners plants and we want to buy them, but you know, we just had to prove it, right? The proof is in the pudding. So next year should definitely be better. You know, we'll see how it's going. Proven Winners is going through, you know, some changes right now and all that kind of stuff, but it's all really, really good. And I think next year is going to be like, I think it's going to be really good. So next part of that, number 2, she says, I have a small lime tree that I bought at Costco several years ago. It has lived in a rather large pot and I have not really done anything, and it has not really done anything so far. This year I got about 10 limes. I transplanted the sorry little root system into the same pot and with fresh soil, moved it into the area of the garden with lemons and combination tangerine tree. Should I just plant it in the ground and give up on the pot? Thank you, Janie, for all the information you help us with. 2 things. Citrus trees take a long time to start actually fruiting. So the fact that you got some limes this year is a really good sign, right? So you might be getting to the stage where your citrus tree is starting to start fruiting. So I wouldn't necessarily give up on the pot. You were patient, you did a good job, you got 10 limes this year. Next year you'll probably get 20 or 30 limes or, you know, or something like that. So if you don't want to give up on the pot, don't give up on the pot. However, I don't like growing citrus in pots because I am not good enough at fertilizing my citrus in pots. And citrus in pots need to be fertilized consistently, like literally consistently all throughout the season. You need to be giving them their food. Just like I was saying before, that's their only source of nutrients and they need nutrients to grow. So if you're going to grow citrus in a pot, you need to make sure you're on top of it with fertilizing. So if you haven't been on top of it with fertilizing, that might be the reason why you're not getting as much fruit, but it sounds like to me you're just not quite there yet, and probably next year is going to be even better than this year. So it's kind of up to you. I wouldn't give up on it. But it is easier to grow it in the ground. Okay, New Gardener 9B, I like your name, says, is Jason back to work or still helping full-time in the garden? Okay, you guys, Jason is back to work. Jason is a very sweet man. Jason doesn't like gardening as much as I do. Jason, when I first started gardening, Jason used to always tell me that it wasn't exercise. You know, I would come inside and I'd be like, oh, I'm so tired. And he would be like, you need to go to the gym. That wasn't exercise. Like, that's not exercise. Like, we had this whole joke about it, right? And so Jason, a couple years ago, he quit his job and he came to work for Dig Plant Water Repeat full time. And, we had a really good time at it. We had fun, you know, we were working together, but he just doesn't have that passion for gardening. So it wasn't a money issue or anything like that. You know, he just wanted to go back to work, which I find crazy because I wanted to get out of healthcare, but I think he really missed it. It was something that he really loved doing. So he was kind of doing part-time just to kind of like maintain he's a physical therapist. So he was maintaining his physical therapy license. And then he just got offered a job with a really big company here. And so he starts in a month. So that's why you guys don't see him as much, you know, and like I wanted him to stay home with me. I wanted him to have fun and stay home with me, but I'm not going to make someone do something that they don't absolutely love. And he learned pretty quickly that you have to love gardening to keep doing it. You know what I mean? Like weeding and all that kind of stuff, and spraying BT and spraying fertilizer. And he just doesn't have the passion that we have, and I just don't understand it. So we decided, like, he was just going to be happier if he just kind of went back to work. So we decided to have him go back to work. So I'm sad about it, but he's pretty excited, and you know, I'm excited that he's excited. So we'll still see him around because our physical therapist job, it's very, very flexible. If I have a project that I want to work on with him, I can ask him, and he can kind of push off patients or something like that. So it's not a 9-to-5 job. It's still 40 hours a week, but it's not. Like he can work throughout the week. He has flexible hours. I should say that. So you guys will still see him. Okay. So T Wild says, hi Janie, here's my question. If you could change anything about your garden or property, what would it be? What a fun question. I really appreciated this. I would change the fact that it's so close to the airport. Now, I know I've been told many times that I apologize about the noise, and I say, oh, I'm sorry, it's so loud, or, you know, I say that, and a lot of you guys can't really hear it on camera, but I definitely hear it. And it's not a bad thing, you know what I mean? Like, we have a really small local airport. We have, I'm looking outside. There's a skydiver, like right outside my window, right here, there's skydivers. And so that's the majority of the airplane traffic. And then, you know, there's some private planes and stuff like that. But I would say if I could change one thing, I kind of wish I didn't have an airport right across the street from me. It would be nice. I go to, we just went to Santa Rosa on that helicopter, and there it was silent. Like, it was absolutely silent. And I was like, this is really, really nice. But it's the type, like, I live in California, the land of the most expensive property ever. And it's really hard to afford property. So just Jason and I are just super happy to even be able to afford someplace in the country and afford space. So I don't want to complain. I'm not complaining, but if I could change one thing, it would be not to be so close to the airport. All right, so next question is from KP. She says, hi, Janie. I absolutely love how your secret garden turned out. Thank you, me too. I especially love the coral bark maples. Will they ever grow so big that you'll eventually have to move them further away from the house? I've always wanted to have a tree close to a window, but worry too much about causing problems for future me. Thanks for being my morning gardening buddy this past year. So this was a very common question that I got when I was doing the secret garden, because I did plant 2 coral bark maples close to the house. And then I got even more questions on yesterday's video where Michael and I went to this beautiful property in Santa Rosa, and he planted 2 more coral bark maples close to their house. And it's so funny because it's such a common thing here. And Michael and I were kind of looking at these questions, and, you know, and coral bark maples roots are not invasive. You can plant them close to a house. The only thing you have to worry about is if the branches kind of hit at the house, and then you want to prune them back, but you're pruning your coral bark maples anyway. I've seen so many properties with these planted, and other Japanese maples planted really close to the house. So I was kind of surprised at all the comments that I got. And then I was thinking, I wonder if it's from people who have basements. I wonder if that's what it is, because here in California, we don't have basements. The majority of people don't have basements here in California. And I don't know why, but we don't have basements. So we don't have to worry about that kind of thing. You know, you don't want to plant, a weeping willow close to the house or something like that. You don't want to plant something that has really, really invasive roots next to the house. And of course you wouldn't do that. But there's a lot of trees that we actually have a, what is it? It's like Tree Foundation of Woodland, which is a local, it's like, you know, it's a city that's close to me, and they actually will come out and they will plant trees close to your house, like not as close as the coral bark maples, but pretty close to your house, and they call them shade trees. And basically they will shade, the purpose is for them to grow and shade your house to keep it cool during the summer, and then they lose all their leaves during the winter and let the sunlight in and warm your house. And it's this whole like government funded program, and they come out and you sign up and they plant a tree like 6 feet away from your property, like for free, right? So I think it just kind of depends on where you live, and check with the local arborist, of course, maybe check with the local landscape designer or something like that to see what works in your area. But coral bark maples are non-invasive, and they're fine to plant close to at least our house, but obviously check with your local people. So hope that answers your question. Okay, so another question from Amy. She asks, when do you stop spraying Proven Winners soluble fertilizer weekly on all your flowers? So what Amy's talking about, I spray water soluble fertilizer weekly on all of my annuals, and it makes a huge difference, you guys. Like, it's such a pain in the butt. I hate doing it. Jason hates doing it, but it's something that you have to, like, if you're going to invest in having annuals, you want them to be as beautiful as possible. And so giving them the food that they need is super, super important. And so we spray absolutely weekly. We should be spraying our hanging baskets even more, but I don't, and I should. And you can see on my hanging baskets, you can see the foliage is kind of yellow and they need more fertilizer. So I can't justify fertilizing more than once a week. So anyway, when do we stop? We can stop anytime now at this point, right? Anytime, I would say anytime up to like 6 weeks before your first frost. It kind of depends on how long you want your plants to extend into the season, right? Because at a certain point, the frost is going to come and it's going to kill, or at least really, really damage a lot of the foliage and a lot of the blooms. So it might not be worth your time to be fertilizing. Lots of times I will stop October 1st. That was kind of my, like, okay, I'm going to stop October 1st. This year though, because I'm leaving a lot of my plants in the ground, I'm going to continually fertilize them until we get a little bit closer to my first frost, because I don't want any new growth when the first frost comes, right? Because I'm trying to overwinter a lot of these plants. So basically it's once it gets close to your first frost, maybe like 4 to 6 weeks away from your first frost, you can probably cut back a little bit. Not cut back, stop. You can probably stop at that point. But we are still going this year just because I'm playing around with it and I'm seeing how far I can push the annuals that I do have in my garden this year. All right, last question is from Carol. Carol asks, when doing a container garden, is it better to have a bottom in your container or no bottom? My containers I am considering are 3 feet tall. I would say my answer to this question is it depends. Isn't that great? It depends on what you're planning to grow, Carol. Are you planning to grow like a tree, right? Or like a big rose bush that you're going to leave there for years and years and years? If you're planning to grow something big with a really significant root system, no bottom would be great because those roots can extend down into the native soil. I would say even if you have no bottom though, you still need to fertilize your container because the surface roots are going to be up in those top 3 feet, and those are going to need a lot of the fertilizer that it's not getting from the ground. If you're just going to be growing, say, like vegetables or annuals or something like that, the roots aren't going to get down to 3 feet. So it doesn't really matter. It's kind of up to you, what you want to do. You know, you kind of think about it. Might be easier if you have a bottom so you can empty it out and replace all the soil a little bit more easily. So I would say it depends. It depends on what type of situation you want. Now, when it comes to Vigo garden beds or like the raised beds that I have here behind you guys in front of my greenhouse, those have no bottom. And the reason for that is it's encouraging the native microbiome to come up into the soil. So these raised beds, I'm doing a no-till method, right? Where I'm encouraging the plants to go down into the native soil. So if you're thinking about something like that, then I think no bottom is probably better. But then you got to think about gophers. So there's pros and cons to kind of any way you want. You have to just think about, okay, what situation am I going to use these containers for, and then decide accordingly for that. So anyway, I just want to thank you all for submitting all these questions. You guys saved my butt today, so I didn't have to go and use my muscles. I was so sore. Luckily, it wasn't hurt. I didn't hurt my back. I didn't hurt myself, knock on wood, but I was definitely very, very sore. So taking the day off today, it was huge. So huge thanks to you guys. So anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this. I hope you have a great weekend, and I hope you have a chance to get in your garden today.